Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're diving into a 2018 action drama thriller called Red Sparrow. Major spoilers ahead, so watch carefully. The story unfolds between two lives in Russia. First, we meet Dominika Egorova, once a celebrated ballerina who now dedicates her time to caring for her ill mother. After a doctor's appointment, she leaves her mom under the care of a nurse and heads to the theater. She gets ready backstage, applying her makeup before greeting special guests, among them her uncle, Ivan Egorov, the deputy director of the Russian intelligence service. Ivan introduces her to Dmitry Ustinov, a shady Russian businessman who uses the chance to inappropriately touch her while posing for a photo. Moments later, the performance begins. Dominika dances beautifully as always until, during one routine, her partner lands heavily on her leg, snapping it in a brutal accident. She's rushed off stage for surgery, her career shattered in seconds. Meanwhile, another story unfolds. Nate Nash, a CIA agent, receives a coded call that leads him to a secret meeting spot in a park at night. Armed and cautious, he arrives and spots both a car tailing him and a man walking toward him, a contact known by the codename Marble. As they cross paths, Nash discreetly hands Marble an envelope before continuing as if nothing happened, but the car keeps following him. To help Marble escape, Nash fires a few shots into the ground, creating chaos, and runs off through the streets with the car in pursuit. He reaches the city and makes it safely inside the American embassy, surrounded by police. Inside, his superiors assure him that the asset, Marble, is safe, but they still order Nash to return to the United States for compromising the operation. The next morning, Ivan visits Colonel Zakharov, head of the Russian Secret Service. General Kortnoy is also present. They review surveillance footage from the park, showing Nash's meeting. They already know Nash's CIA, but what truly interests them is the unknown man he met, Marble. Meanwhile, Dominika wakes up in the hospital, her leg encased in metal. Realizing her dancing days are over, she breaks down in tears. 3 months later, still limping with a cane, Dominika receives an unexpected visit from Ivan. He coldly tells her she's been replaced at the theater, and that all the benefits, including her apartment and her mother's medical coverage, will end now that she's out of work. Then he offers her help, leaving behind an envelope before leaving. Inside, Dominika finds photos proving her former dance partner is having an affair with her replacement, as well as a recording implying he injured her deliberately to make room for his lover. Later, Dominika sneaks into the theater, watching her ex-partner and the new ballerina rehearse. After practice, she follows them to the steam room, only to find them together. Furious, Dominika attacks them both with her cane, beating them before fleeing in panic. On the bus home, she notices her hand covered in blood. She stops to call the authorities and reports the assault as an accident. When she returns to her apartment, she discovers her mother collapsed on the bathroom floor. The caretaker never showed up because the theater stopped paying her. Desperate and out of options, Dominika visits Ivan for help. He agrees on one condition: she must do a job for him. He wants information on Ustinov, the same man she met at the theater. Her mission: approach him, gain his trust, and use her charm to get close. Dominika refuses at first, but Ivan reminds her that without him, her mother's only option is a public hospital. Reluctantly, she agrees. That night, she arrives at Ustinov's hotel. Wearing an elegant dress provided by Ivan, she waits at the bar until Ustinov approaches. She tells him she came to see him, to feel special again. They go upstairs, and after dismissing his guards, Ustinov immediately begins undressing and demands she do the same. Nervous and hesitant, she complies. As he starts to assault her, a man in a black helmet suddenly appears behind him and slits his throat. Blood splatters everywhere. Without a word, the stranger tosses Dominika a coat to cover herself and silently leads her out through a back exit. In the parking lot, he kills an employee and speeds away with Dominika on his motorcycle to an abandoned building. There, the man removes his helmet, revealing himself as Sergei Maturin, another operative working for Ivan. In another room, Ivan and Kortnoy watch Dominika on surveillance screens. When Kortnoy suggests eliminating her as a witness, Ivan argues she could still be useful. Ivan then meets Dominika in person and admits he knew exactly what would happen in that hotel room but kept her in the dark so she would agree. He gives her a choice: join a secret training program to serve her country, or face the consequences alone. With no other option, Dominika agrees. A few days later, she's taken to a secluded facility known as the Sparrow School, where she's greeted by the strict and cold matron, head of the institution. Matron gives her a fake name and shows her to her quarters before announcing that training begins immediately. In her first class, Matron explains that the modern world is full of chaos and betrayal, and that Russia alone is strong enough to fix it, by any means. The recruits are told they will become sparrows, trained in psychological control, seduction, and manipulation. Dominika and another student, Victor, are ordered to the front and told to strip. Victor obeys instantly. Dominika hesitates, unable to comply. Matron harshly scolds her in front of the class for her defiance. Meanwhile, Nate faces his own punishment back in the US. He's called before the CIA's disciplinary board and informed of his suspension. He pleads with them, explaining that Marble, his Russian informant, trusts no one else, but his protest is ignored. Back at the Sparrow School, Matron continues her brutal lessons. She plays surveillance footage and asks the students to read what each target desires. Victor guesses wrong. Dominika corrects him, earning his resentment. Another female recruit is brought forward and ordered to perform a sexual act on a restrained man from the footage. She breaks down in tears and refuses, but Matron coldly reminds them that their bodies are merely tools and begins teaching techniques of control and persuasion. Dominika spends the following days enduring the harsh routines of the Sparrow School, mental and physical training meant to strip away all emotion and individuality. One day, she's caught secretly watching a video clip of herself dancing from her old life. Matron confiscates it and reminds her that her past identity no longer exists. Later, Matron orders Dominika to seduce Victor as a test. When Victor approaches her, expecting a sexual encounter, she calmly tells him to take off his clothes. But instead of giving in, she turns the situation against him, humiliating him by refusing to touch him and explaining to the class how control comes from power, not pleasure. Matron applauds her for understanding the true lesson. That night, Matron visits Dominika privately. She tells her that the agency has noticed her potential, and that she might have a future beyond these walls, if she proves herself worthy. Meanwhile, Nate is reassigned to Budapest, Hungary. Although officially suspended, he continues communicating with Marble, his secret Russian informant, hoping to re-establish contact before the Russians find him. His handler, Trish, warns him that the Kremlin has launched a massive hunt for the mole. Back in Russia, Dominika's training ends. Ivan visits the Sparrow School to evaluate the graduates. Matron presents Dominika as one of her finest students. During the final exam, Dominika is asked to seduce a high-ranking officer for classified information. She plays her role perfectly, extracting every detail before ending the test and walking away with full composure. Ivan smiles, impressed. Afterward, he tells her she's being assigned to Budapest. Her new mission: get close to CIA agent Nate Nash and discover the identity of his Russian contact. Dominika travels to Hungary and meets her local handler, Marta, another Sparrow who has been stationed there for years. Marta teaches her the basics of surveillance and covert communication, reminding her that failure means death. At a cafe one afternoon, Dominika spots Nate reading at a nearby table. She accidentally bumps into him, spilling his coffee. She apologizes and offers to buy him another. He accepts, and they start talking casually. Nate finds her charming but guarded. Later that night, he checks her out and realizes her background doesn't match any existing records. He suspects she's a Russian operative but decides to keep seeing her to find out what she's after. Over the next few days, Dominika and Nate meet several times. She slowly earns his trust by pretending to be a lonely Russian embassy worker. Meanwhile, she sends coded updates back to Ivan, who pressures her to seduce Nate to get what they need. Dominika hesitates. She feels a connection with him that she's never felt before. In a parallel scene, Ivan meets with General Korknoy again. Korknoy warns him that Moscow wants results soon, or Dominika will be removed. Ivan insists she's making progress. One night, Marta comes home to find her apartment ransacked. She quickly realizes the Russian agency discovered she was secretly selling information to the Americans. The next day, Dominika arrives and finds Marta's corpse. She hides all evidence of her presence and runs straight to Nate, terrified. She tells him what happened and insists the Russians will kill her next. Nate, believing her, takes her to a safe house and comforts her. During the night, they talk about trust and manipulation. Dominika asks him how he can be sure she's not lying. He replies, "Because you don't know how to lie to me yet." Eventually, they sleep together, not as part of the mission, but out of genuine emotion. The next morning, she calls Ivan and claims she's gained Nate's confidence, but Ivan is suspicious. He orders Maturin to watch her closely. Meanwhile, Nate meets with his CIA team and informs them about Dominika. They think she could be turned into a double agent. Nate objects at first, but then agrees, realizing she might truly be seeking a way out. Back in her apartment, Dominika finds Maturin waiting for her. He attacks, accusing her of betraying the agency. A brutal fight ensues. She manages to stab him repeatedly, finally killing him. She calls Ivan to report that Maturin tried to assault her. Ivan doesn't buy it but pretends to believe her. Later, she confides in Nate, saying she wants to defect and give the Americans information about the Russian mole inside the CIA, but she only talked to him directly. The CIA arranges a secret extraction. However, when Dominika arrives at the rendezvous point, Russian agents ambush her. She's taken to Moscow and brutally interrogated by Zakharov. They strip her, beat her, and try to force her to confess to being a traitor. But she insists that Nate was the one who tried to recruit her, not the other way around. Just as Zakharov is about to execute her, Ivan walks in with orders to stop the torture. He praises her loyalty and says the agency will reward her. Dominika, half-conscious, realizes Ivan just saved her life, but for his own interests. A few weeks later, she's sent to recover at home with her mother. Ivan visits again, proud of how she fooled the Americans. He tells her she now replaced General Korknoy as his new intelligence asset abroad. That night, Dominika receives a secret call from Korknoy himself. He reveals that he is actually Marble, the CIA's mole inside Russian intelligence. He explains he's been feeding information to Nate for years to prevent global conflict. Now that he's retiring, he wants Dominika to take his place. He warns her that Ivan will eventually betray her too, just as he's betrayed everyone else. The next day, during an official meeting, Dominika reports to the agency that Ivan is the traitor leaking intelligence to the Americans, effectively framing him. As Ivan protests, Zakharov orders his arrest. Ivan is dragged away screaming her name while Dominika watches coldly, knowing she's now secured both her freedom and her mother's safety. Days later, back in her apartment, she receives a call from Nate. He simply says, "They bought it. You're free." Dominika smiles faintly, looking at a childhood photo of herself dancing, a final reminder of who she used to be. In the background, the same melody from her ballet plays softly as the screen fades to black.